Welcome to the Shadow Dance Edge podcast show, where what we really want to do is inspire you to take that next meaningful step in your growth edge. And here with us today is a wonderful woman I hold near and dear to my heart, Miss Katie Anne Holton. She is a kinky polyamorous lesbian whose kids still call her dad. Welcome to the show, Katie Anne Holton.
Thank you.
So I'd love to know, what's alive for you right now in your world?
It's not typically something I'm very concerned about, but I slipped and fell and broke my arm up here end of October. And so my physical capabilities have been very limited. And it's been a very slow process of worrying / doubting that I will be capable, that someday I'll be able to tie my shoes by myself. Someday I'll have the same capabilities I had before, and doubting, fearing that I will, and then what? It's been a very slow process, and it's been wonderful as a way of reminding me of all that I took for granted, the little things that I never really thought about, that there might be difficulty doing those things because I didn't have to think to do them. Doing them one-handed, and I've got a whole lot more mobility now than I did even a month ago.
Can you give me an example of something that you took for granted that
Well, tying my shoes, being able to blow my nose with two hands. Now I can fairly easily reach my both hands up here. Trying to blow your nose one-handed,
no, it doesn't work?
it's not the same. That's the sort of thing I never would have thought about, the fact that I did use both hands for that. And opening bottles, opening medicine bottles, anything childproof. Now it's Katie proof. And I'd have to ask Heather or ask my son to open. If I wanted some Diet Coke, I'd have to ask someone to open the bottle for me.
You know what? I find that when I ask people to do things, I'm actually giving them a gift because a lot of people love to help. They love to feel like they can be there for you. Did you find that kind of to be true when you asked people to do things?
Yes, I didn't get, no, I don't wanna. I got, sure. And I wasn't necessarily asking for long-term, projects, but just, hey, could you help me with this? Or when you come over, could you help me with this? And the people in my life, they feel that honored. They feel like they have a chance to support someone they love. And fortunately, I have the kind of people in my life who respond that way.
Hmm. So if somebody out there is dealing with a broken leg, a broken arm, a broken pinky, I'm not poking fun at you, but what it I know because I've been there with some hip issues, and I felt like it was going to be that way forever, and I there was no end in sight for thinking that I was going to miraculously be healed someday. That was it for me. It was over. Is there something that you could share, part of your experience, your wisdom around coming back into health, or that could help somebody that's going through those feelings that nothing's going to change, I'm broken forever?
That's a hard idea for me in general, because I do tend to think that whatever bad thing I'm going through, this is the way it's going to be forever and ever. Amen. So part of it is, for me, is just reminding myself that it just ain't so. That even, you know, early on in my injury, okay, I was taking little steps. Things were getting a little closer. I had more emotion in my arm. I had I could, eventually I could take off a sling. And so it's the helpful idea has really been to test my doom and gloom prediction against reality. Perception testing is what I think it's called in
Them psycho
DBT.
world people.
Yeah, the psych world, and just testing that. And that's been my go-to technique in a lot of ways. If I go through heartache, I was talking with a friend at her birthday party over the weekend, and she said something that I've said often. I've never really heard anybody else say in the same way, is just, I can't fool myself when I tell myself, oh, nobody's ever going to love me again. I'm going to be alone forever. I can't look at myself and say that with a straight face, because that's not the world I live in. My world is abundant with love and lovers and partners and friends and co-conspirators. So when I'm trying to talk myself into a depression, it's been surprisingly effective for me to talk myself out of that spiral.
You have a phrase that I love that you use when you
Sure.
find yourself going into that. You got to share with us what the
Okay.
phrase is, Katie.
It's, bitch, please. Because that's what I say to myself, my sort of sassy gay black man. Bitch, please. Because the doom and gloom world my patterns want me to believe in just isn't real, and hasn't been real for years and years.
Yeah.
And so, if I tell myself I'll never meet someone new, well, that's just not how my life has turned out. And
There's something else that you do that you didn't mention, but I want to bring up because it inspires me when you do it. And that is every once in a while, I'll get a little text that says, I did this thing. It's like you celebrate like all the little things. Like when I think you said you opened a lid or something and you haven't tied your shoe yet. You don't have that one, but when you put on a shirt by yourself. And so you had to like text me right away and celebrate it. I got my shirt on. And that was great.
and I hope to cultivate that awareness and that gratitude. I try to do that in life, but I just have been knocked on the head, almost literally, being reminded of how much I did take for granted.
Yeah.
And how each thing that I am now celebrating was just as neat 3 months ago when I thought I was healthy, and just as glorious an ability as it was back then, but I wasn't as aware of it.
Yeah. So we have guests in our studio audience, and I'm just wondering if you might have a question for Katie Ann.
I have a question. So, in the heart of inspiration, what would you put into a nutshell for someone who just had a recent injury to their shoulder or their elbow or their wrist or their hand or some other extremity? Just some words of encouragement. What would you say to them?
It's hard because someone has to be asking for advice. If not, it comes off as Pollyanna-ish of, oh, you're fine, you're not struggling. And I would never want to say that to someone who was struggling. I would never want to minimize what they are dealing with. But if I knew them well enough, I would want to ask, so what's something you did today that you didn't do yesterday because you couldn't yesterday? Is there a motion that you made today? Is there a task that you were able to handle today? Encouraging people to, in the midst of all the things that they can't do, notice those things that they can do.
Well said.
Really well said. Absolutely. Focusing on the things that are working. I love it. All right. Katie, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us about how you make people feel needed and wanted in your life, and how you're celebrating all of the small steps that you've been taking toward getting better. And is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
And maybe I've done it already, but I hope that I can be a reminder to people when I mention my little milestones. Just if I can take that new awareness of, oh, it's really great to be able to tie my shoes. If someone can be reminded of how glorious it is to be able to tie your shoes, or someday I'll be able to wash my hair with both hands, I'm getting closer. And it's so if I can remind people of those little joys and those taken for granted capabilities that we all have, then I'm doing good work, and I'm happy to be able to.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Katie. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and lifting our spirits and showing us that it's just take things one day at a time and one small significant, movement at a time, less pain. Thank you so much, Katie Ann. Love you.
You're welcome.